I think it is a bit presumptuous, especially if you don't already have any concrete facts to substantiate that, because many other indicators suggest otherwise. Another thing that was said was that...
Can I say one thing? Specifically from the 1980s when they dumbed down the system and government right.
Exactly.
But
I do not need so long as my grandmother and mother.
yeah, okay, fine. But see,
I understand education.
well, maybe you understand education. I'm not saying you understand education. What you said is understanding literate, and perhaps there's a philosophical difference. Exactly. And my point only is that I think we should be a little more careful, less careful with the statement, because without substantiating it, it is reckless.
Let me ask you a question.
May I just go on? The other statement about the amount of money spent on education, I think that was a little erroneous. If it's being suggested that $9,000 is being spent on students in public schools, then we have to realize that out of the ministry's budget, not all of that money is allocated to primary and secondary education. You have about $50 million that goes to College of the Bahamas, ETBI, scholarships, and other programs and subventions to independent schools. But also the enrollment in public schools is not 35,000. No, it's more on the order of 51, 52,000. And so I just want us to realize that it's fine enough for us to make an observation, it's fine enough to make a suggestion, but I think we should do it a little more carefully. If we don't have the numbers, it's fine. But if we're going to use the numbers, I think we should use the numbers that are more reflective of the reality.
The controversy that's engendered in arguments of the past and laying blame, while provoking heated discussion, is not very useful. And that's why in this presentation, I did not go back to the strategic errors that I think that were made in the past. But anyways, this is why I excluded it from my discussion.
Yeah, my question was, how do you think that we should try and get the message that, from what you're basically saying, how do you think we should try and convey that message to the government so that the government will then put it on forth to the Bahamas? Yeah, like take action with it.
It's a discouraging process. The Coalition for Education Reform started in 2004. It took the government 5 years, it took the government 6 months to formally recognize the receipt of their written proposal. The PLP, Minister of Education, never talked to the coalition except for one 5-minute conversation at a cocktail party at Atlantis. The current administration came in, and it took them a long time to sit down also with the coalition. There is an inherent desire not to listen or to consider. And that in part comes, I don't want to be too dogmatic about that, because I've experienced the same experience within my own family. I have 7 children, and I have a daughter. I have 2 daughters. One daughter is still teaching, and I have a daughter who was a biological scientist before resigning to go back and teach. Now, the only way she could go back and teach biology, she had to get a master's degree in teaching, in education, in order to teach biology. And she taught biology to 8th grade students in the city of Denver. And when I started work on this project, what I found out was when I talked to her about education, what the response that I got from her was that, well, you don't understand. You haven't sat in a college, in a classroom. You haven't put up what I have put up with a teacher. What did she put up with? Well, her doctor husband visited class one day and was just absolutely floored by it. Her oldest son, who is now a student at Harvard Law School, and he's on Harvard Law Review, he went one day Beth's class. I asked Beth, I'd like to go to one day at one of your classes and see what it's like. And she says, Dad, I won't let you. It's so degrading. She says, to me, it's so degrading with what I have to put up with and the challenges I face within the classroom that are really non-teaching classes, that I don't want you there. Now, that's the problem. And what she said, however, was that when you expound on education, you haven't been there. You haven't gone through what I do. And you get that reaction from teachers, and you get that from the Department of Educations everywhere. And in fact, all the innovative ideas in the United States have come from outside the education community.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you a little experience. We run the sailing school here for underprivileged kids and everything else. We have an after-school program. And we have a teacher that brings kids here during lunch. It's their PE class of the day. She has a bachelor's degree, and she's an excellent teacher. And she holds this little carrot in front of the kids that they can't come to this program because they all like to come and do the swimming and the sailing and everything else. And if they don't do their classwork and all their homework and everything else, they're not allowed to come on the field trip.
Right.
And as a result of that, from the Christmas term to the present Easter term that just ended, the entire class went up 1 full grade point in their average. And so I totally agree with you, it's in the teacher's realm to make things go forward. And she's now going back to get a master's degree because she realizes how important it is to teach properly.
Well, a master's degree in education in the United States is considered by some to be the worst expenditure of money that one can make. The state of California spends $3 billion a year getting its teachers to get master's degrees. The conclusion has been that this is the worst $3 billion that California spends with regard to education. But anyway, that's my own.
Masters of Education.
I want to speak on that.
Matthew. Oh, here we have a teacher now.
Thank you, Rob.
Let me, unless you don't know Matthew Williams, Matthew Williams is a mathematician, a musician, and an old friend. And I'm glad he's here. Go ahead, Matthew.
Ralph, you know it's very easy to bash teachers.
To what?
Bash teachers.
Yes, it is.
And a lot of parents have their bad stories about teachers, good stories about teachers. But if you can only get your teachers from the bottom 30 or 40 percentile, what sort of quality performance are you expecting? And if you don't pay them, the better gifted persons could find other jobs.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. I want to dispel the ideas that teachers are to be blamed. They're not to be blamed. Nor is the system to be blamed. Nor is the government to be blamed. Your discussion really went along the lines of recipes to cure. I would like us to look at how can we prevent our children from reaching that stage of poor performance. In other words, we want to look at how to prevent it from happening. Because after it has happened, we have to find all of these different cures. You got close to it, I think, when you mentioned the baby college.
Right.
I think that's where we should be going. How do you get to sensitize mothers who are teenagers, to sensitize them about their responsibilities as a single mother or as a parent? Because when you send your children to school here